Seth MacFarlane, of course, Family Guy, everything else. He was on Logic's podcast. I didn't what was Logic's name? I looked this up and it's crazy. Logic's real name, the rapper, is Sir Robert Bryson Hall II. I don't know why you name a kid that, so that people have to call him Sir Robert, I guess. But he had Seth MacFarlane on, of Family Guy fame, and Seth MacFarlane is of this mindset that he, not only is he more informed than everybody by virtue of, doing nothing and showing no special knowledge, he just knows, but he also believes that there's this magical mainstream media that's better than everybody, has access to more information than everybody, and really is looking out for you. So here's him on Logic's podcast.
Doing all these other things, and then social media comes in, and I think journalists are fucking incredible.
Yes, so do I.
If somebody who writes an entire article about how much you suck, but they like fucking went to college, got a degree, earned it, take the time to go through all the things they don't particularly like about it, amazing. Yeah. But then when you give that same power to every person in the universe with a Twitter account, has that ever affected you?
Completely wrong, and I'll tell you why. First of all, these going to school for this stuff is not hard. I've gone to school for broadcasting and for public relations, which both include journalism, both include lots of different classes. It's not hard at all. Barely have to go. You can still pass easily. You can. I was one of the only people in my graduating class that got a job in this field. That is public relations. Most people don't go into it. Most people in the journalism space don't go into it. Very few people actually successfully go through this because it doesn't require a lot of you and you don't learn that much. That's number one. Number two is people that don't go through this stuff and just become journalists on their own, like through a Twitter account, like through internet research. Those people are much smarter and more capable because they've gone and done this themselves. They might not have the same connections. So he's wrong on both those fronts. And for him to say that, doing a hit piece on somebody makes them a good journalist. No. Because what they do is parrot claims that they've already had. It happens to Dave Portnoy. It happened to anybody you've ever heard. Well, I'm going to say 95% of the people that were called alt-right in like 2016 to 2019. All these hit pieces you've ever seen on somebody, that's not somebody, doing their due diligence and going through everything that this person has ever done. Their mind is clouded with vengeance, and they just parrot things they've heard from other people. So these aren't special people. So I'm disappointed in Logic in hearing. I hadn't heard that part. I'm disappointed in Logic for him saying that. But we're about to hear Seth MacFarlane almost say the same thing, where we're holding certain people up on a pedestal.
You just said it more eloquently than I ever could. It is true. Like I am also. I will defend to the death the presence and existence of journalists. As you said earlier, print media is in trouble. It is. Yeah. I mean, look, the way I look at it, like when you look at a New York Times article on Instagram.
Here it comes. Can you smell it?
That's funny. That's a funny sentence.
Yeah. But they do have an Instagram. And you look at the headline and you read it and you maybe click on the link and you read the story.
Let me quickly, I know people have a problem when I pause it all the time, but quickly point out that when Seth MacFarlane says when you go on Instagram and you read a headline and you maybe click on the link, that means he's not clicking on the link. When you say you saw something on social media and you maybe click on the link, that means he's never clicked on a link. The click-through rate from social media to news articles is so insanely low that for Seth MacFarlane to use the word maybe and then try to be like he clicks on this, he scrolls through social media like so many people and doesn't click on the links. This, of course he doesn't do that. Why do you think people got so upset in Canada when they turned off the ability for news companies to post on there? Because they don't want to have to leave the site. They can go to the website. They can just go to the NewYorkTimes.com or MSNBC.org. They could just go to that, but they don't want to. Because people don't do that. People don't click off. The people who are getting their news from Instagram aren't going to these websites, Seth MacFarlane. So you can pretend like you are and that people are, but Seth MacFarlane is reading headlines on Instagram and he has a problem with your comments.
That story, whether you agree with it or not, whether you connect with it or not, has been written by somebody who did the research, who did the work, who did the footwork, who put in the hours to at least make an attempt to communicate the truth to their audience.
I can agree with that part so much as a person like myself, even honk honk. You put in the time. Yes, technically you've put in the time, you've put in the research, and for the most part, we can give people the benefit of the doubt and say that most people aren't monsters. I usually go with 10% of people are acting in poor faith. They try to communicate the truth from their perspective. But as we see increasingly, that is not true with an increasing number of journalists. But for this microcosm of what he's saying here, I can agree with that part.
And yeah, they're not perfect. You know, they're not
still. They're just their opinion.
They're not perfect. If they make a mistake, and they do make their share of mistakes.
Shout out Complex. Y'all fuck up all the time. Anyway, continue.
You know, there are retractions. There are admissions of that. You know, that's what separates Fox News. Fox News is in it for the dough. That's as simple as I can put it. They're in it for the money, and they make a lot of money, and they get a lot.
See, that's where I think Logic may disagree with him on. He said Complex is bad and that's everybody else's opinion. Seth MacFarlane has this weird idea that the New York Times is special, and we'll get to what he says about people commenting in a minute. But he has this weird thing in his head that he thinks New York Times is special. It's full of nice people. They mean you so much well, so much good deeds, good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. But Fox News, they're out for the money. New York Times doesn't care about money. They'll survive on integrity. Integrita Farms. This just isn't true. There's no special access the New York Times has. You can build contacts. Yes, you can build contacts. You can do investigative journalism. All that stuff exists, but it exists at Fox News as well. To say that Fox News is especially bad than the New York Times. You're telling me that you don't watch Fox News. I'm sorry. I'm not a big Fox News guy. I haven't watched as much Fox News nearly as much since Tucker Carlson left. I'll admit that right off the get-go. And I probably watch more CNN coverage and MSNBC coverage since that happened. But if you sit and watch Fox News for any reasonable amount of time, and you compare that to CNN, MSNBC, or what Seth MacFarlane says on talk shows and podcasts, it is far more fair than left-wing media. That's just the facts. And this is coming from a person, I've been there. Fox News this, Fox News that when I was younger. The worst, it's terrible. People don't watch it when they say that. People who say that haven't watched it for any significant period of time. Actually take some time to watch the channel. You might disagree with it, but it's still more fair and more honest than CNN, MSNBC, and the like. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Not only that, but it is more opinion-based and openly opinion-based than the other channels. You will have Laura Ingraham, Jesse Waters, The Five, all these people, Hannity on Fox News giving you their opinion. But you will have far more broadcasts on the left-wing outlets that just say, this is just how it is. Isn't that crazy how right-wingers are like this? This isn't my opinion. Anderson Cooper, all these guys present this as if it's their opinion and as if it's just the way that it is. And it's just not true. Any person who's well-versed in news that isn't shilling can openly admit that Fox News is more honest than the other outlets, if you're watching all these with an open mind and an open, set of beliefs. I didn't get this way. I didn't get to this position by saying I've grown up Republican and these left-wingers are always out to get this. I got to this from a position of not knowing who to trust. And it's like the same way you watch sports and you say the New York Yankees are likely going to win because of who's on their team and what's their organization and how much money they have, etc. The same way you watch sports and determine who you think is going to win or who's more likely to win. It's the same thing with politics. You know the players, you know the teams, you know the managers at these teams, you know the ownership. And sorry to tell you, in a Canadian accent, that you can trust Fox News to win, as in be more fair and correct, more often than you can the other outlets.
A lot of viewers. Is it worth it? Wouldn't be to me. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
Definitely not.
But it makes them a lot of money.
Complex.
And you know, when you look at legitimate journalism, I go back to what I said. You look at a New York Times article on Instagram, and then you look at the comments, and everyone thinks they're an expert. Everybody thinks that they know better than the person who did the legwork. Everybody thinks they know better than the person who put in the hours, did the research, did the interviews, did the follow-up, did the best that they could to make sure that everything that they put into print is factual. And maybe they missed something. Maybe they fucked up, but they did their best.
Yeah.
And then, you know, me, Johnny Spaghetti stain on his shirt, writes a comment. That's bullshit. It's under there because there are studies that have shown that if you read an article on social media, you process it a certain way. Once you read the comments and you start absorbing the inevitable extremism that comes with the comments that are kind of reduce that to black and white, your perception of the original article is affected.
Seth MacFarlane has a disdain for the common man because, you know, when he was coming up, early Family Guy days, probably a good decade, he was the shit, right? Nobody had a YouTube channel. Nobody had, you know, fame from social media or just from coming up on their own and doing their own commentary. And he doesn't like that. He doesn't like the fact that anyone can just give their opinion. He has this phantom belief that the New York Times is special and that journalists are special. Trust me, they ain't. And he doesn't like the fact that people can comment on it. Your mind might be... He's saying that your mind might be changed from the comments. Who determines what is extremism? The same people that don't want you to listen to the people in the comments. And he says in there, I think we missed it, where he says, I can't believe that these news companies consent to allowing comment sections on their social media. Well, a lot of them don't on their website because you're already there. But on social media, engagement matters, so they have to... Well, they don't have to, but they still allow it. If things get too ornery, then they turn them off. But to say that you don't like comments on something and you shouldn't read the comments because it might, you know, radicalize you essentially and change your opinion, heaven forbid you should hear another person's point of view and weigh that against the evidence on your own. It's about competition. The less people whose voices are out there, the easier it is for the big guys. And he's going to come out and say, till his face is blue, that he's fighting for the little guy, that he cares about the people. He supports Joe Biden. He said Joe Biden's age is a superpower. He thinks the New York Times is special, and he thinks that people in the comment section are idiots, and we shouldn't be paying attention to them because they're extremist views. And they don't know any better. And you don't have the ability to research things like a person at the New York Times does. Well, sorry, Seth MacFarlane, you're completely fucking wrong. And, you know, I know that you're not reading things. He does the same thing Bill Maher does, and I will not compare them. Bill Maher is he's much better in his political opinions than Seth MacFarlane is. He does have a lot of blind spots still, but, you know, he's a human being. I'll still give him like the 60 to 70%, you know, good take ratio. For left-wingers, it's very high. Seth MacFarlane's batting way lower. And they have these views where it's just like, it's a very 2016 view, and I'll bring up a guy named Hunter Avalon. I've debated him. You've seen John Doyle debate him. And you'll see people like Destiny do this, where they'll be in a debate and they'll be typing the whole time. And every time they're not talking, they're typing because they're trying to look up statistics that agree with them. They're trying to look at polling. They're trying to look up government stats that agree with them. And this is how they argue. It's the 2016 debate tactic. Well, Biden's economy is doing very well comparatively to G7 companies post-lockdowns. And then Biden goes on TV and he says, look at our statistics. Everybody knows it's bullshit, and it's detached from the real world and from common sense. You can't come up with your own argument and your own logical strain to support your ideas, so you have to look elsewhere. You have to look for outside justification and outside, what's the word I'm looking for? When you look up something that agrees with you, confirmation bias. You do that when you don't have your own ideas and arguments. So that's what Seth MacFarlane does. He doesn't have any of his own ideas. He can't argue from his own place of knowledge. So he has to say the New York Times is an authoritative source. So I listen to them, and if you're not the New York Times, you're a nobody. Logic says if you didn't go to the university and you didn't put together this hit piece, you're not believable. It's two people who haven't been through the game like you and I have for the last 8 years now. It's two people that are rookies in this, and they're just like, appeal to authority. This person went to university. They work for the New York Times, therefore they're right. I have no idea why they're right. I have no idea if they're right. I don't have any facts on this, but because of their title and their position, they are therefore correct. Joe Slob in the comment sections doesn't know anything. Therefore, we can't trust him. Turn off your comments.
Turn it up, Jordan.